live up to that lead-in. Anyway. My name is Terry Campion, and I'm a grateful, recovered alcoholic and drug addict. And as a direct result of the 12 steps you guys have up here in this program and sponsor who holds me accountable, I haven't stuck a crack pipe in my mouth since December 6th of 2006. And, I never could achieve more than, I started smoking crack and drinking, and it started circling the tube in about 1989. And I never could achieve anything like permanent sobriety. I don't know if any of your stories are like this. I would go splat. I would hit what I thought was a bottom, and I would stay sober, and I would come to a place like this, or Salvation Army, or Dallas Life Foundation, or Union Gospel Mission, or Old County, North Tower, West Tower, New Holland, Government Center, TDC, all former addresses of mine. Okay? I haven't always looked like this. Okay? And I never could achieve anything more like 4 to 6 months sobriety. And I would rebuild. I'd come to a place like this, and I would rebuild my life, and I would get sober. And I'd rock along for a little bit, and then for whatever reason we're going to get into a little later, I would pick it back up again. And the same cycle happened over and over. I'd lose all control, wind up losing my job, losing my place to live, get thrown out of whatever transitional house I was in, and I'd wind up on the street. And I'd rock along on the street for a little while, and then I'd check back into another transitional place, or one of the Dallas County facilities. And I was living in that same pattern since 1989. You know, it says in the book, it says our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we're like today. And you know, for me it was pretty simple. What I used to be like, I was no good. I was absolutely no good. As a drug addict and as an alcoholic, I was absolutely no good. You know, back in '92, I first started smoking crack in 1989. And in '92, that's when drugs really started hitting the Dallas area, the crack, really hard. And you could buy it just about anywhere. And I'd go out on a binge, and I'd be out for 3 or 4 days, and I would run out of money. And I still had a car, and you could pull up in almost any apartment complex, and you'd have 4 or 5 guys run out with a handful of dough, and I would just grab some dope out of their hands and burn them. That was one of my MOs. And one night I was on about a 4 or 5 day binge, and I went back to the same place that I had done that the night before. And I got shot. A point blank range. With a .38 pistol, a guy holding it right to the window of the car, fired it right at my head. Fortunately, the bullet deflected off the window, went through my shoulder and down in my back. And I remember, after they took me to the hospital, and I'm laying there in the hospital, and blood's dripping out of my shoulder and my arm, and I swore that was enough. I would never do this again. I was done. You remember those times that you said to yourself, whether it was alcohol or drugs, and you said to yourself, I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. Okay? And you weren't saying it to him, and you weren't saying it to her, and you weren't saying it to the probation officer or the judge or the parole officer, all people who I said it to. Okay? You were just looking in the mirror, or you were just talking to yourself. And you said, I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. And that was me laying on the gurney in Parkland after they cut my clothes away. And I'm weighing about 130 pounds, and I'm laying there with a bullet in my back, and I'm bleeding, and I'm done, and I'm not going to do this anymore. They released me from the hospital, and 3 days after I left the hospital, I had a little stick shift car. And I'm driving, steering with this knee, shifting with this arm, because this one's damn near blowed off, heading to the dope house. See, I'm suffering from an illness of both body and mind. Right? The worst thing in the world that ever happened to me couldn't keep me sober. I couldn't stay sober. You know, That wasn't enough to keep me sober. That's who I was. Those were the lengths that I went to get high or to get drunk. I picked up my first Desire chip in 1989. I was 33 years old. And I'd been drinking most of my life since I was about 15 years old. And then I started doing dope. And then it escalated into cocaine. And then it escalated into crack. And that's when I started circling the toilet. Didn't take very long. Once I started smoking crack, I started circling the toilet. You know, we all have that thing that we find that sends us down the toilet. Could be alcohol, could be meth, could be heroin. I know some people that is that way with weed. I don't get that. Okay? But I know of some people it's that way with weed. Okay, we all have that thing that sends us down the toilet. You know what, if there's one thing while you're here at Shoals Harbor, if there's one thing that you want to check yourself on and get honest with yourself, is ask yourself, why are you here? It's a pretty good question. Why are you here? Okay? Why am I living and why am I staying at Shoals Harbor? And again, I'm not running anybody down because the only reason I never stayed here, I never heard about this place. I didn't know it was here. Or I assure you I'd have been here. Absolutely. Okay? But ask yourself, and while you're here, why are you here? You know? Because I know this, at 49 years old, I was in Homeward Bound, wearing everything I own, weighing 120 pounds, and a Kroger sack of somebody else's stuff. I don't even know whose stuff it was. Okay. And that's not where I aspired to be at 49. I didn't say to myself when I was 16 years old, God, I can't wait till I'm 49 years old and I'm broken, homeless, living in Homeward Bound. But that was my truth. That was the truth about where I was. They told me I could use the phone when I got to Homeward Bound at 49 years old. I lived in Dallas, Texas for 50 years. They said I could use the phone and it was like, why? Wouldn't nobody I know take my phone call? Because that's who I was. I was a selfish, self-centered individual and I didn't care who I hurt. That's who I didn't care about my family. I didn't care about the people that gave me jobs. I didn't care about anybody but me. And I was going to do my thing. And I was going to keep trying to control it. See, there comes a line. The one thing you'll never hear me say from the podium is that drugs and alcohol are bad. They just don't work for me. I don't know your story. See, I don't know why you're here. Absolutely, there could be a few people in here tonight that aren't a drug addict and they aren't an alcoholic. They just had a rough run of luck. I don't know. What is your truth? What is the truth about every time you pop the top on one or any time you score a little sack of something? Okay. What's the truth about it? Because you know, if there's one thing I'll tell you, if I could control my drug and alcohol use, you know where I'd be tonight? I'd be out there controlling it. See, drugs and alcohol were the greatest things I ever found. It made a good day better and it made a bad day tolerable. It made me funnier. It made me happier. You guys used to freak me out. Put a little dope, put a little alcohol in my body, and I was one of you. See, I can remember the first time I got high, or the first time I altered the way I felt. I can remember the first time like it was yesterday, like it was in Blu-ray DVD. I can't tell. I'll probably wind up leaving my phone here tonight. I had to plug it in to charge it because I'm that forgetful. But I can remember back 40 years ago to the very first time I altered the way I felt. Because like it says in Bill's story in the book, I had arrived. I had found something that made me a part of life at last. So you'll never hear me say that drugs and alcohol are bad. They just don't work for me today. And again, what my sponsor hit me with so many times throughout this program as I fought him all along the way is, how's your way of doing things working for you? Well, let's review. I'm 49 years old, I'm wearing everything I own, and I weigh 128 pounds, and I'm broken homeless. And I'm fortunate enough that I have a picture of that. If y'all want to have some fun, pass that around. That was taken of me the day before I got sober, permanently, in December 6th. That's who I was. That's what I was, and that's what I had become. My way of doing things, that's how I had turned out. Look at those finely chiseled features. But that's who I had become. And you know, great drug addict and great alcoholic that I am, I get into Homeward Bound, and I know some of you have had these thoughts too. I'm quite sure of it. I'll come in here, Souls Harbor, I'll get back on my feet, I'll get sober, I'll detox, I'll stay here for a little while, things will get better, and this time when I get out there, I'll control it. See, I won't let it get that bad another time. And that's exactly the way I felt at 49 years old at Homeward Bound. I had a plan. Say, I had a plan. And I remember I left Homeward Bound, and they let me into a transitional house. The guy let me in. It was like a little, actually it was over here in Pleasant Grove, off of Buckner. And he let me in under the pretenses that I had to find a job right away so I could start paying some money. And I'll never forget, I got to that halfway house, it was 2 days before Christmas. And I got there, and there was nobody there, and I was feeling a little sad because it was Christmas, and here I was, once again, had totally destroyed my life. And I didn't have anybody in this halfway house. There was no phone, there was no TV, we didn't even have heat. And my brother had given me 20 bucks. That's what I had to make. That's what I had to rebuild my life with. I had $20 in my pocket. And I'll never forget, I tried to take a nap, and I couldn't do that. I couldn't sleep. And I went downstairs, and I was sitting at the table, and I thought to myself, I'm going to go get me a beer. I'm going to go get 40 ounce. I got 20 bucks. Okay? I'm 2 weeks sober. But I had learned and heard enough, and some of the things that y'all are going to hear about tonight, I had learned a little bit enough that I knew my truth. That once I put a little bit of alcohol into my system, I was going to the dope house. And there wasn't going to be any stopping me because it had never been any different. That's who I'd been. I put a little bit of something, something in my body, and the party is on. You better put a helmet on and you better guard your stuff because I'm probably coming after it. Because I can't control it. And I knew that was my truth, but I was miserable, and I saw no hope, and I saw no future, and I just didn't want to do this anymore. And I remember I sat there and I was shaking in that chair. I'm 2 weeks sober, and I knew what would happen if I went and got, and I did the only thing I knew to do, and I said a prayer. I asked God, I said, God, I don't want to do this anymore. I really don't. And I remember at that moment that I had this guy's phone number in my pocket. And I walked across the street and I called him on the phone. And he told me where to meet him that night. And I haven't had a drink, and I haven't stuck a crack pipe in my mouth since that day. And the best thing about it is I'm happy about that. See, one of the things I could never achieve in sobriety was happiness. I could never be happy in sobriety. I was always miserable. I was absolutely always miserable in my sobriety. And therefore, I turned to the solution that made it all work. Drugs and alcohol. And that solution doesn't work for me anymore. Ask yourselves this. Our drug and alcohol addictions are in 3 different stages. First, it works. It's the greatest thing I ever found. Then it still works, but there's some problems attached to it. Then it's nothing but problems. Every time I pick it up, it's nothing but a problem. And that's the 3rd phase. That's where I was, and I knew my truth. I knew that if I picked it up, it wasn't going to be any different. So my sponsor told me to meet him up there, and we started to get busy in this 12-step program. This is what happened. Okay? This is what happened. We started to get busy in this 12-step program, and the first thing we did was we went over step 1. we started going over step one a little bit. We admitted we were powerless over drugs or alcohol. You notice there's a hyphen there where it says alcohol? You notice there's a little hyphen right there? We got two separate statements in step one divided by a hyphen. And the first one has to do with your body. I'm powerless over it because every time I put it in, the shit owns me. Okay? It's that simple. Every time I put it in, I can't control how much I put in. Like I told you all earlier, if I could go get me a 40 and a dime rock, and drink the 40 and smoke the dime rock and then sit there and shake for a minute and then eat a sandwich and go to bed and go to work tomorrow, that's what I would do. But I can't because I'm powerless over it. See, in the doctor's opinion in the book, he's got a theory, and this is one of the things that really kind of caught me. He's got a theory as to why I'm powerless over it now. Because I wasn't always powerless. Did your drug and alcohol use the first time you put it in? Did you go out and steal a car that night? I did. You know, I didn't say the very first time I snorted a line of coke, I didn't go, man, that was good, I better kill myself. I didn't say that. Guess what I was thinking at the end? That was a card I had in my pocket. That's where it had taken me. But I wasn't powerless over it when I first started doing it. The doctor has a theory is that perhaps we have an allergy to this stuff. Perhaps we don't react like normal people do. That when we put it in, it owns us, we can't call our numbers. Other people can go to the bar and drink 2 or 3 drinks, shoot some pool with their buddies, and then go home at 9 o'clock. Normal people can do that. The addict or the alcoholic can't. The addict or the alcoholic is the guy who stays there all night long. He's the one that can't control it because once I put it in, I can't stop it. It produces a craving that I cannot control. It's an allergic reaction. You know, I've done this sometimes. I wished I had it tonight because there's plenty of room to do this. I've got one of those little things that you hit your knee with that kicks your knee. And if I had it and I hit your knee, I could sit here with all the money in the world and you can't stop your knee from going out. You can't do it. It's a reaction that you're having to me hitting you on the knee. The same thing with drugs and alcohol. Call on your own experience. Are you having that reaction when you put it in? Can you control it? And that's the body part of this thing, is that I cannot control it. But you know what? That's not the worst part. The worst part is the second part of step one, where it says that our lives have become unmanageable. And they haven't become unmanageable because I can't hold a home, and I can't hold a car, and I can't hold a relationship, and I can't hold a job. I mean, we can manage. Has anybody in here ever get hired drunk on a day when they didn't have any money? Okay? You manage in all kinds of stuff. Okay? You manage to do that. See, the only thing about my life that becomes unmanageable, right there where that hyphen is where I make a decision to stop. I've had about all the fun that I can stand. And I don't want to do this anymore, and I make a decision to stop, and then I rock along a little bit, and I get restless, irritable, discontented, the doctor says. I get miserable in my sobriety. And I turn back to the solution. And the solution is drugs and alcohol. And that solution doesn't work for me anymore because when I put it in, I'm powerless over it. Call on your own experiences, and I'll give you a perfect example. This happened to me many, many times. See, the second part of step one has to do with my mind. The mind is where the crux of your problem lies if you're an addict or alcoholic. You know, once you get through detox, 3 or 4 days of detox, you're about as sober as you're going to get. Okay? If your guy's been here a couple of weeks, you're as sober as I am. And I haven't touched it for 5.5 years. But why is it I go back to it after I have made the decision that I'm not going to do this anymore? See, and I can't manage that decision. I put it back in and I return right back to powerless, and it's a cycle I'm living in. See, step one is the problem. The doctor tells me I become restless, irritable, and discontented. And I'll tell you, here's a story that's a true story. I lived at the 24-hour club. Anybody know East Dallas? I lived at the 24-hour club many times. And this is a story that happened to me one time. I crawled in there and they took me in, and I got a job. And they gave me some clothes, and I got to take a shower, and they started feeding me about 2 or 3 days. And then somebody gave me a bus pass. And I found a job on the bus line up by Mockingbird Station. It's like, glory, hallelujah, God is good all the time. Okay, it's like, wow. Okay, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I found this job, and I got a chance to rebuild my life one more time. Okay, and I got a place to live, and I got a job, and it's on the bus line, and I got a bus pass. The people at the job give me a bus pass. And it was working in the back of this little kitchen, making $8 an hour, and I was so thrilled to have it. And I'm living at the 24-hour club, and they're going to let me stay there until I can pay them, and it's a great place. I've got shelter. I've been living on the streets. Before I cleaned up this last time, I lived on the street for a year. That guy in the picture had been living on the street for a year, sleeping behind buildings. Right? And I've got a place to stay now. They're feeding me. I've got a job, and life is good. God is good. I work there, and I get my first paycheck, and it's a Friday, and I get my first paycheck, and it's, yeah, I go get me one of the little prepaid cell phones, and I get a haircut, and I stop by the thrift store, and I get a couple of pairs of jeans, and I come back to the 24-hour club, and I pay them the rent for the week, and I'm on top of the world. And I'm even looking at the girls now. Okay? I'm all that. And I rock along, and I'm working there for a couple of weeks, and I'm taking the bus to work, and I'm living in the 24-hour club, and some of you guys will understand this syndrome here, and I'm happy, and things are going good, and I'm not smoking crack, and I'm not drinking anymore, and starting to get on my nerves a little bit living in a house with 40 other guys. Okay, so-and-so talks on his sleep all night, so-and-so snores, and so-and-so's feet stink, and I can't get a good night's sleep. I'm starting to get a little irritable over that. And I go down to the lot in the morning, you get a cup of coffee, I got to start my day with some coffee, and they don't have any coffee. I'm pissed. And I go outside to get on the DART bus, and it's raining. And all of a sudden, the DART bus sucks. Right? All of a sudden, the DART bus sucks. I don't like the place I'm living, and I'm miserable. And I'm pissed off, and I get to work, and I start walking into work. And it's like, God, I can't believe I'm working here making $80 an hour. Don't these people know who I am? Okay? I should own this place. I should be running this place. They ain't paying me nothing. 3 weeks ago, I was on cloud 9 because I had a job and a place to live and a cell phone. And I've still got all those things, and I'm miserable today. Absolutely miserable. I'm restless, I'm irritable, discontented, and I have a shitty day at work, and I come home that night, and I'm riding the bus back, and all of a sudden this voice comes in my head, "Psst, Terry, get off the bus at Bennett where the liquor store is. I know you're not supposed to be drinking, but man, you know, a little something, help you ease out of this little irritation you're going through." I'm thinking, yeah, I'm not going to tell anybody. I know you'll make it back to the 24-hour club by 8 o'clock for the last meeting. You're not going to let it get this bad, Terry. You've learned your lesson. See? And my mind convinces me to go for it. My mind is trying to kill me and make it look like an accident. And all of a sudden, I'm agreeing with my mind. Yeah, I can do this. And I go, and I get that 40, and I put it in, and what happens? I go right back to powerless, because I can't control it. And I don't make it back for the 8 o'clock meeting. The next thing you know, I got me a brown bag in my hand. Who knows what a brown bag is? Okay, a little $5 brown bag, okay? And next thing you know, I'm smoking rocks behind the building, drinking 40, and I don't make it back. And it starts the cycle one more time. And you know what the worst thing about being restless, irritable, and discontented is? I'm sober, and I'm miserable, and I don't know why. Because see, I could have swore to you that all my problems came from the fact that I did drugs and alcohol. If I'll just stop the drugs and alcohol, the problems will go away. I stop the drugs and alcohol, and the problems don't go away. And I'm miserable, and I don't know how to live life without it. So I turn to it for a solution, because when I put it in my body, guess what? Y'all all go away. The snoring, the smelly feet, the no coffee in the morning, and the crummy job all disappear. Because I feel okay. See, I've changed the way I feel with some drugs and alcohol. But the problem with that is it doesn't work anymore. It renders me powerless every time I put it in. And if you've crossed into that stage, here's some really bad news. It's never going to be any different. I hate to tell you that. They keep coming up with pills for you, but then they keep coming up with 12-step programs for those pills. Okay? All right? It's never going to be any different. If you're that guy who you can't control it and you can't stop putting it in, when it comes to drugs and alcohol, you're screwed. I hate to be that blunt about it, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. When it comes to drugs and alcohol, you're screwed. You can't control it when you put it in, and you can't stop from putting it in. I can't make, it's killing me, and I can't make it through the day without it. And that's the problem. See, step one's the problem. Step one is something I do out there. I don't do it once I'm in here. It's the reason I came in this room. It's the reason why I stood up one day and said, hey, give me one of them little chips. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore, because I was trying to live in that problem. Thank God there's a solution. Okay? There is a solution to that problem. And that's step two. Step two is the solution to this program. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Wait a minute. Somehow they're inferring that I'm insane. Okay? That I need to be restored to sanity. Let me give you another story. Another example of insanity. And this is the way that people in your lives look at you. I'm living at the 24-hour club. Okay? And I'm about 2 months sober this time, and I'm living at the 24-hour club, and my mind attacks me again, and it tricks me into going over to the dope house, which you can't throw an AA book out the window at the 24-hour club without hitting the dope house. Okay? They're everywhere in East Dallas. So my mind tricks me one more time, telling me that this time today, Terry, it'll be different. So why don't you go get you a dime rock? My mind tricks me into it, and I go over, and my man is still at the same apartment complex, which is somewhat of a miracle. Okay, and I knock on his door, and he looks at me, and I'm looking kind of almost like I am today, and he said, wow, what happened to you? Because the last time he saw me, I was this guy. All right? And he said, God, you look good. What happened to you? And he stepped out of the room for a minute, and his TV's on, and I noticed, no, that's my TV. Sure, I'm the only one in there that's ever done that. Okay? And he said, what happened to you? And I said, well, you know, the last time, he said, God, you look great. And I said, well, the last time I was here, you know, and I said, I scored a couple 50s from you, and then I hooked up with this girl, and we went down to the motel room, and we were partying, and she stole my car after we ran out of dough. And I wound up losing my car, and I smoked all weekend, and I smoked up all my paycheck, and I couldn't get back into the halfway house I was staying in. So I got kicked out of the house, I got fired from my job, and I lost my car. That was the last time I was over here. You got some more of that stuff? This is what happened the last time I came over. Can I get some more of that? Normal people don't do that. Normal people have that kind of stuff happen in their life, and they don't go back saying, not only can I have some more of it, I will pay you. I'll give you some money if you'll give me some more of that. Because it worked out so well last time, I'd like some more. And that's insanity. Me going after the first one time after time after time again is absolutely insane. Because it doesn't work. Again, call on your own experiences. I don't know why you're here. I just know my truth. It doesn't work for me. And me going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, that's just an insane notion. That is absolutely insanity. So I'm looking for something to restore me to sanity, where I can make a sane decision when it comes to drugs and alcohol. When I can clearly say, Terry, that's a stupid idea. that doesn't work for you. And you know the thing is about in this step 2, you notice it doesn't say the word God. It says this power. This power that is greater than yourself can restore you to sanity. Because see, there are things out there that are greater than you that can't restore you to sanity. Any judge in here ever keep anybody sober? Any probation officer ever keep anybody sober? Parole keep you sober? But you know, they used to tell me in different treatment centers, oh, I'm powerless over people, places, and things. Well, I had a judge look at me on a Monday and said, you're going to come in the courtroom on Friday and do a UA, and if your UA's dirty, you're going to prison. That was on a Monday. You know what? I used on Thursday. I stayed sober till Thursday, used on Thursday, and went into this courtroom on Friday. The threat of going to prison didn't keep me sober. I exercised my power over that judge. Staying out of prison, staying out of jail, staying out of transitional centers like this, does that ever keep you sober? The threat of losing your home? Are you powerless over places, or do you use over those places too? And powerless over things. Anybody in here ever been to a pawn shop? Yeah. Are you powerless over your things? Or can you exercise your power over your things and go, see, the only thing I'm powerless over is this drugs and alcohol. And I need a power greater than me that will restore me to sanity. The chapter on we agnostics, it comes in like a lamb and it roars out like a lion. And it's going to tell you what that power is. Okay? It's going to give you the opportunity to choose whatever power you like, as long as it makes sense to you. But at the end of the chapter, it's going to tell you that you know that that power is God. Because I'll put this question to you. I've started off working with hundreds of guys and sponsoring hundreds of guys since I've been sober. This is what I do to stay sober. I get the privilege of Brent asked me to come out and talk, and I'm here. This is what I do, and this is what keeps me sober. And one of the questions I ask all the guys I work with, is there at one point in your life, and nobody has ever been able to tell me no, that I believe. At one point in your life, did you ever say, look up or look down and go, man, get me out of this one? Who were you talking to? Were you talking to a Coke can? Were you talking to the cat? Were you talking to a tree? Who were you talking to? And did you believe it would work? See, fundamentally, we all have that belief. Nobody pulled me aside in the 3rd grade and said, hey, Terry, listen, when shit hits the fan, ask God to get you out of it. I just came up with that on my own. Get me out of this one. And whatever that power was to you at that time, start off with that power. It can be that simple. Hell, you chose it. Okay? You're the one that went to it and said, hey, help me. Get me out of this. You chose it, so go with that one. But you will soon find, if you stay with this program, that that's what we're talking about. And we move on to step 3. Step 1 is the solution. Step 1 is the problem. 2 is the solution. Steps 3 through 9 are designed to get me to this power they're talking about. And in step 3, I'm going to make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as we understood Him. I'm going to make a decision. You've all probably heard the old story about 2 frogs on a log, and one of them decides to jump in. How many frogs are left? 2. All he did was make a decision. I'm calling you to make any actions. Just make a decision. Now, we're going to have to follow that up with action. But step 3 is just making a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand it. The one that you chose. To turn your will and your life over to me. Because, again, this is what my sponsor kept hammering home to me. And it was so true. How is your way of doing things working? Let's review. And it wasn't pretty, but that was my truth. So could this power that you're talking about do any worse a job than you're doing? Couldn't in my case. I don't know about yours. So I'm going to make a decision. The decision I'm going to make in step 3 is that I'm going to go on with the rest of this work like my life depends upon it. Okay? I'm going to make a decision to work these steps. Because you know, these steps aren't the only way to a spiritual experience. There are many ways to a spiritual experience. These, however, are one that works. So I'm not looking for another one. I don't want to sleep behind the Kentucky Fried Chicken anymore. Okay? I found one that works. That's specifically designed for an addict or an alcoholic. I found one that works. Steps 1, 2, and 3. I can't, he can, I think I'll let him. That's simple. Hell, I've done steps 1, 2, and 3 while they were putting the handcuffs on. It's that simple. Not a whole lot of action in those 3 steps. There's absolutely none. Step 4 is the first place that this program asked me to get busy. Okay? Step 4 is the first place this program actually asked me to do anything. Okay? And get a pencil and a piece of paper and take a personal inventory. See, we're great at taking inventories. We're great at taking a personal inventory, just not mine, yours. Okay? I can take your inventory all day long. I can tell you what's wrong with you and what you're not doing right. I'm good at taking your inventory. I'm not real good at taking a look at my stuff, but I'm real good at taking a look at yours. I'll give you another example of how that is so true, about taking other people's inventory. I'm quite sure there's a lot of people in this room tonight that have already made some kind of judgment about me. See, that's what we do. We judge other people, and we're good at it. Now it's talking, let's take a look at you. Not what they did. Let's take a look at your stuff. We do that in 3 different areas of our life. Our resentments, our fears, and our sexual relation conduct. Our relationship conduct. Hell, resentments are easy to refeel and to rethink something. I was an angry little guy. I needed a lot of paper. But you know, a lot of people get it mixed up a little bit with what is a resentment and what is anger. And I'll tell you, I had an old business partner that screwed me out of my business. His name was Tom. If you introduced yourself to me as Tom in the last 25 years, I stared a hole right through you. And it brought up that old feelings of this guy that screwed me out of my business. That's a resentment. Anger is a guy cut me off on 175 on the way over here driving a little green Honda. I'm not going to get pissed off every time I see a little green Honda. Okay, that just made me angry. I'm not going to carry it with me. That's the difference between a resentment and anger. I'm going to take a look at my fears. You know, I love the way the book talks about fears. We ought to class them with stealing. How can you class fears with stealing? Because we are such fearful little people. My sponsor told me I'm selfish, I'm self-centered, and I'm full of fear. And how can I class fears with stealing? And he said, well, there's a new job coming up. And you'd like to have it. But you don't apply for it because your mind convinces you that you're not going to get it. You're not smart enough. You don't drive the right kind of car. You don't have the right kind of clothes. For some reason, they're not going to put you in that promotion, and you get fearful and you don't go for it. Who'd you just steal from? You just cheated yourself. You just stole from yourself. I'm not going to ask that girl out. She won't go out with me. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I don't have the right kind of car. I don't have enough money. So I don't go for it. So I'm fearful. I fear rejection. Who did I just steal from? Who did I just cheat out of an opportunity for a relationship? And that's how I was living my life, in fear. I was resentful, I was living in fear, and my relationship conduct sucked. All my relationships up until this point in time had been hostage situations. Okay? They weren't relationships, they were hostage situations. We're going to do it my way or the highway. It's that simple. I was looking for a girlfriend when I found you. Okay? We're doing it my way or the highway. So I had a lot of stuff going on in this 4th step, and it's the first time in this program, or the first place in the program where it absolutely asks you to do something. If you haven't done a 4-step yet, you haven't really done anything in this program. So one of the things you're going to learn about this program is it's not about meeting attendance. It's about doing some work. It's about grabbing a hold of this thing and doing some work. And I'll give you another example about that. Let's say you decide to go to Weight Watchers to lose 20 pounds. How many meetings do you have to go to lose 20 pounds? Or do you have to take their program and do something with it? It's the same way with this. Why would I expect to get healthy through a 12-step program and not work the 12 steps. It's not about meeting attendance. It's about getting in here and working the steps, and that's the first place I actually take some action. Step 5, I'm going to sit down with that sponsor, with God, and we're going to go over this stuff in my 4th step. And you'll probably hear some things that you don't want to hear. You know, I'll take you into one of my 5th steps. Not all of it, mind you, but I'll take you into one of them. Tom, I already told you about Tom. Okay, he was my business partner. You got these sheets of paper and you write this stuff down on a piece of paper and resentment. Tom, why? Screwed me out of my business. And that's all I could see. So I sat down with Michael and he said, all right, give me your biggest, baddest resentment first. And I'm sitting there looking through my sheets of paper. Hell, I know what it is. I know the thing in there that's been eating my lunch. It was Tom. I'm living behind the Washateria at Gaston and Carroll, and he's living in a big old house out in Plano. And he screwed me out of the business. Tom couldn't mail, we started this business together, and Tom couldn't mail a letter without me putting a stamp on there and giving him directions to the post office. Okay? I thought he was an idiot. And now he owns the business, and I'm sleeping behind the Washateria. And every night I went to bed underneath the stars, hating it. And it was just a resentment that was eating me up. And Michael said, well, when did y'all start this business? And I said, oh, it was about 1991. He said, when did you start smoking crack? About 1990. I said, huh? He said, what kind of employee were you? And this is why I have the opportunity to get honest. If I really want this program to work for me, because I've had people all my life trying to help me, and I sat across the table and I lied to them. North Star paid good money for me to sit across the table and lie to people who've been trying to help me. And this is my chance to get honest, because I don't want to stick a crack pipe back in my mouth again. And I said, well, so what kind of employee were you? And I said, you know, honestly, really not that good of an employee. So what, did you get to work every morning at 8? No. I was there by the crack of 10. Yeah. He said, did you ever not show up for work? Many times. He said, did you ever steal from the company? Many times. Did Tom ever have to bail you out of jail? A couple times. So what kind of employee was Tom? Pretty accountable, pretty responsible. He showed up every day. He was there to keep the things going when I was out doing my thing. He said, do you ever have to go to rehab while you were in? I said, yeah, in fact, Tom paid for it. And actually, at one point, Tom bought me a car so I could go out and make sales calls. All of a sudden, I started looking at it from a different angle. Okay? All this man ever tried to do was help me. And all I could see was how he screwed me. Because I was willing to take a look at what my mistakes were. And only my mistakes were. Hell, turn find out after we revealed all this stuff, when I was willing to look at it, I wouldn't have put up with Tom half as long as he put up with me. We expect tolerance from people, but yet we're intolerant. We wouldn't let people treat us the way we treat them. Wouldn't happen. And all of a sudden I started seeing a pattern as to who I was. And who I was a selfish, self-centered son of a bitch full of fear. And we got all this stuff out of the way. And then we moved on to step 6 and step 7. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And you know, the book only has that in a half of a paragraph. And so I'm thinking that's a pretty easy step. Okay? That's a pretty easy one. Step 6 and 7, each of them in a paragraph. The 12 and 12 tells me this is what separates the men from the boys. Because some of these defects of character will still work for me. I can use my selfishness with Nassau precision to get what I want from you. Okay? I was in sales for a long time. I can paint a picture to get the outcome I want. But am I ready to give all this stuff up? Again, how's my way of doing things been working for me? So am I ready to give up all these defects of character? In step 7, I make another commitment that says I am. And I'm going to go on with the rest of this work, which includes step 12, me coming out to help another addict or an alcoholic. Me coming out to try to tell my story in hopes that somebody might want what I got. So I'm making another commitment in step 7 to go through with all this. Made a list of all the people in step 8 that we'd harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Boy, this is where my list got bigger. I had a list of all the people we'd screwed over. You know what I'm talking about? And then I remember my sponsor looked at me and he said, okay, read me some of those off. And one of them was a girlfriend of mine. I'm sure some of you can relate to this. I'd leave on a Friday night to go get some pizza and rent a movie. Show back up 4 days later. I'm just going to give me a little dime, you know what I'm saying? And I do that and I score me a little and I don't come back. 3 or 4 days later, and I did this over and over and over again, and she hung in there with me, and every time she did, she would stay there and she would get drunk, and then she would wind up going to her mama's house, and she would whine and cry and complain to her mama all night long about what was wrong with her. And she was #1 on my list to make amends to. Her name was Monique. Guess who else I got to make amends to? Her mama. Guess who got to pick up the pieces of my crap? Her mother. I changed her mother's life too, because poor little Monique had to run home every weekend to Mama, and Mama had to break all her plans to nursemaid Monique. All of a sudden, my list expounded, and I had a lot more people on my amends list than I went in going into. Step 9, I want to make direct amends. People, wherever possible, except when to do so will injure them or others. And there's nobody in this room that's an other. I'm sorry. It doesn't work like that. We're not others. Here's the greatest thing about that. Here's where you start to really experience the promise of this program, is when you're willing, face to face, to get in front of some of the people that you have screwed over and look them in the eye and say, when I did what I did, I was wrong. What can I do to make it right? And then I shut up. And until you've done that, repairing the damage that I've done in the past, that's where you will start experiencing some of the promises of this program. And some of the promises in this program are absolutely incredible. It says, if we are painstaking about this phase of our development, 9-step amends, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Self-seeking, we're the world's greatest self-seekers. My whole self-worth is based on what you think of me. So therefore, I'm going to go out of my way so you think a certain way of me. And it's tiring to do that. You know, today, having worked this program, I hope you like me. I really don't care that much. And that's just the way it is. I hope you do. But it used to be your acceptance was the most important thing in my life, and I'm going to do whatever I got to do to get it. I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm staying here. And I go out in the morning to get on the bus or whatever, the vans, and somebody's left a pile of trash out in the driveway, and I see Brent standing over there. And I'm really in a hurry, and I ain't got time to pick it up, and I really want Brent to think I'm a good guy. So I walk over and I pick up the pile of trash and I give Brent a little nod so he sees me doing this. And I take it out and I put it into the dumpster and give him another, hey, you know, it's Terry, great job. And I go on about my day, and I damn near miss the van, and I'm holding other people up on the van because I'm doing something because I want Brent to think a certain way about me. The next morning I get up and there's a pile of trash in the driveway. But Brent ain't out there. Do I pick it up? See who we are? We'll go out of our way to make sure that other people like us. And it's tiring. And one of the greatest reliefs I get in this program is self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. And what could you never do for yourself? Stay sober. See, I don't do that today. God does that for me. I'm going to give you another example. 6 months sober, I had worked this program, and I was working it, and I was following my sponsor's instructions, and I was studying the book, going to some meetings, going to some wind-up joints. We call them wind-up joints because that's where we wind up. And I'm doing all this stuff, and I'm getting this spiritual experience. I'm getting this psychic change that this book just talked about. And I'm at work, and I'm cleaning out a car we repoed, and I found a crack pipe underneath the seat. And it looked like somebody had just melted a Milky Way on it. Okay? I'm sure some people here know what I'm talking about. And my first thought was, I'm going to go around the corner and push this thing, and I can smoke on this thing all day long. As I'm thinking that, my hand is dropping it, my boot is crushing it into the ground. I didn't do that. What was my thought? Go around the side of the building and push it. What happened? I dropped it on the ground and I crushed it. It's an absolute miracle. And until you experience the promise of this program, you won't know what I'm talking about. I don't stay sober today. The power does that. I never could stay sober. The only time, if you ever think you're doing this, that's the time you're in trouble. Because if I could do this without doing all this other stuff, I probably wouldn't do all this other stuff. But I get to be happy today, I get to be joyous, and I get to be free in my sobriety, and I can never achieve that. And steps 3 through 9 will get you to that power. Steps 10, 11, and 12 are designed to keep me there on a daily basis. Steps 10, 11, and 12 are what I do on a daily basis to keep what I've got. I check myself every day in step 10. I spend some time with God in step 11. I get out there and I spend some time trying to help another addict or alcoholic in step 12. It's not a sole vocation. I have a job. I have a 9-year-old foster daughter. I'm busy. But I spend time. I don't put half as much time into this as I did keeping the ball rolling when I was out there. That was a 24/7 soul vocation. Okay? This is not. And these things can happen for you quickly. I worked these steps in about 6 weeks, and I was on step 12 out there helping other addicts and alcoholics. And my life has been wonderful since then. And I'll leave you with this. Let me read you this little paragraph out of Working with Others on page 100 of the book. It says, both you and the new man must walk day and day in the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. That's a promise. If you persist. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances are. I've never met anybody that was too stupid or too downtrodden to get this thing. I've met a lot of people that were too smart, but I've never met anybody that couldn't get this thing. It's available to anybody. I've got the opportunity to watch a lot of people's lives change. If I can be of any help to anybody, please let me know after the meeting. Thank you.